Well, he tells us a little bit how to serve. 3 things about serving. Look at this. He says, choose desire over duty. Serve from a heart of desire, not from duty. Well, it must be done. I guess nobody else will do it. I guess I'll do it. If you can't find anybody else, Pastor Carl, I'll do it. No, look at what he says. Not under compulsion, but voluntarily. 4 words never change the world. Well, if I have to. I guess that was 5. But anyway, it takes desire to make an impact. Desire is what makes the difference. Desire. Can you imagine David going out to fight Goliath, saying, well, I guess if I have to, I'll do it. If nobody else wants to, I'll go fight the giant. Is that the way it was? Not at all. Not at all. His brothers tried to dissuade him. They said, go home and watch your flock of sheep. And David said, is there not a cause? Even King Saul said, but you're but a youth. And David wouldn't be dissuaded, even though the king was saying to him, you shouldn't do this. He said, no, I'm well able. God will deliver this giant into my hands. No problem. Wow. He had desire in his heart. You see, energy comes from what we want to do. And we need to ask God to put the want-tos into our heart. How do we change our shoulds into wants, our duties into desires? Some of you might say, well, I'm stuck in the have-tos. I have to go to work. I have to do this. I just have to do that. And I need a change of circumstances. It might not be a change of circumstances you need. It might be a change of heart. Heart is the key. And we can just pray, God, I'm willing to be made willing. And so, first of all, desire over duty. Secondly, how do we serve? Choosing giving over getting. Giving over getting. He says, not for sordid gain, but with eagerness. Don't serve for what you can get out of it, but for what you can give. You don't make a lasting impact by what you get, but you make a lasting impact by what you give. So the problem's money. No, the problem's greed. The problem's greed, a desire for more. And then thirdly, how do I serve? He says, choose being an example over being in control. He says, don't lord it over those allotted to your charge, but proving to be examples to the flock. That's the biggest challenge you and I have. Anybody can talk it. The real challenge is walking it, isn't it? Being an example. We need someone to show us, not tell us. Your real influence is not how many names are under your name in an organizational chart, but your real influence is how many people are following you. How many people are following your influence, your example. The power to make a difference is not in words so much, it's in example. Not telling, but showing. The word example comes from a word that comes from the die or the stamp. It means to make an impression to match the original. And so here's how to serve. Choose desire over duty. Choose giving over getting. Choose an example over being in control. How do you make an impact? Start serving. Let me say this to you. You might be sitting there saying, well, Pastor Carl, I don't know how to serve. I don't know where to serve. I don't know how to. Let me tell you, I just have just the answer. I'm so glad you asked. We have base classes today, 101, and where you'll get an introduction and you'll find out what Calvary's all about. And then you can go to 201 and they'll help you to form the proper habits in your life so you can grow spiritually. And then we have 301 where we can find out how you are uniquely gifted and find your niche and your place of service. And so how do you make an impact? Start serving. Number 2, the second way to make an impact in your life is stay humble. Stay humble. We see this beginning in verse 5, picking up in these verses in 1 Peter. You younger men likewise be subject to your elders, and all of you clothe yourselves with humility. Did you see what God said? Underline that little phrase, clothe yourselves with humility. Is humility important? They're as important as the clothes you got on. You wouldn't forget to walk in here without your clothes. That'd be terrible, wouldn't it? It'd be slightly embarrassing, Well, God said, clothe yourselves with humility. Must be very important to God, isn't it? Isn't this important? Clothe yourselves with humility, God says. Humility toward one another. For God is opposed to the proud. Did you read that? God is opposed to the proud. Wow, if God's opposed to something, I want to make dead sure I get out of that. I don't want God opposed to me, God's opposed to the proud, but gives grace, His favor, His strength, His power to the humble. And then look at the next verse where he says, Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that He may exalt you in proper time. Circle the word He. Who's going to exalt you? He is. Not you. God will. Put it in His hands. He will exalt you. When will He exalt me? At the proper time. In due time, whenever He's ready, don't you worry about it. So God says, clothe yourself with humility. What is humility? Humility says, I'm nothing, I'm no good. No. You wouldn't want your children talking that way. If they were saying that about themselves, you'd correct them. God made you. And like somebody said, he doesn't make no junk. And so that's not it. What is humility? Humility is, I'm depending on you, God. I need God. I need God. Pride is the opposite of that. Pride is saying, God, I don't need you. Now, you'd probably never vocalize that. But we say it by our lives. And we get up in the morning and we rush right into our day and we never talk to God and we don't look into His book. And we have this, we're just independent of God. And it was pride that caused Lucifer to become Satan. The archangel Lucifer became the devil. Why? Because of pride. You read it in Isaiah 14. We won't turn there, but in Isaiah 14, we have the account of the fall of Lucifer. He says, I will exalt myself into the Most High. I will be like God. 5 I wills there. Pride. And that same independent spirit has seeped into my heart and into yours. God hates pride. You know why He hates it? Because of what it does to you. He hates pride because He loves you. And He feels about pride like a mother feels about a fever that affects her baby. And God hates pride. Look at it from Proverbs 6. There are 6 things which the Lord hates. Yes, 7, which are an abomination to Him. Ooh, this is serious business right here. 7 things God hates. What's the first one? Haughty eyes. Pride. You see that? First thing God said, I hate your pride because it destroys you. It takes you away from me. And then look at the last line of that same passage. And one who spreads strife among brothers. Isn't that funny? Those two go together. Did you know that? Pride and strife. Why? Because this little passage that we're looking at here in 1 Peter here, verse 5, he says, you younger men likewise be subject to your elders, all of you. You see, there's something in my heart. I don't like being subject. Right? You get that? You do. And so God says, humble yourself. And be subject one to another, and therefore be subject to God. It is pride that causes us not to want to be subject one to another, not to be humble, and therefore we begin to cause strife in our families or in our relationships or wherever. Wherever there's strife, look behind it and you'll find pride. Always. Now look at what God says in Matthew 23. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled. Whoever humbles himself will be exalted. He will exalt you in due time. Do you remember how Joseph, when he was a teenager, 17 years old, he had this vision from God that he would one day be a blessing to his family and to many, and his own brothers would bow down before him and his father, and he kind of foolishly shared it with them. Not a good thing. And his brothers began to hate him, remember? And then they sold him. Sold him. Wow. He was taken down to Egypt. And he was sold as a slave to the house of Potiphar. He tried to do a good job. And then he was lied about by Potiphar's wife, thrown into prison. 14 years before that teenager became the prime minister of Egypt when he interpreted the Pharaoh's dream, the king's dream. And what did he have to learn? He had to learn to depend upon God. Same thing with Moses. Remember Moses at age 40? Trained to be a soldier and a scholar and a statesman with all the training of Egypt. And he went out one day and he saw an Egyptian beating on a Hebrew, and he intervened and killed the Egyptian. And then he had to flee for his life, and he spent the next 40 years on the backside of the desert caring for Jethro's sheep. Moses, trained to be a soldier and a scholar and a statesman, a leader of men. Moses, caring for sheep till at age 80. God appeared to him in the burning bush. You remember? God said, Moses, I want you to go to Pharaoh and tell him, let my people go. And notice the difference in Moses. Moses said, who am I to go? God said, I got you right where I want you. I got you right where I want you. Now I can use you. So start serving. Stay humble. True greatness is depending upon God. It is not I can do nothing, I'm a zero, I'm a zilcho. No, it is I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Listen, the writer here is Peter. Did Peter know this? Well, Peter certainly learned it. One day the Lord told him, Peter, before the cock crows, you will deny me. Peter said, ain't no way, Lord. I'll die for you. I'm not denying you. No way. So they went into the garden. Do you remember that? Went into the Garden of Gethsemane. And Jesus said to Peter, James, and John, you stay here and pray. Watch and pray. The spirit is willing, the flesh is weak. Jesus went a little farther over, prayed. He came back. Peter, James, and John are snoring. They're catching some Z's. And a little bit later, Peter denied the Lord.